Kip Gross has a story right out of a Hollywood movie. He was initially drafted in 1985 by the St. Louis Cardinals. Thing is, he never signed with the Redbirds. Instead, Gross was drafted a second time, signing with the New York Mets in 1986, a few months before the World Series trophy was brought back to Queens. Gross hung out in the Mets minor league system through 1989, and then headed to the Cincinnati Reds in the trade that brought John Franco to New York. He made his major league debut on April 21, 1990. That October, the Reds would win the World Series, sweeping the Oakland Athletics in 4 games. Gross would stay in Cincinnati through the following season, and then he would spend a couple of years with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Gross's next move would be the biggest and farthest of his career. He spent his next 5 seasons playing professional baseball for the Nippon Ham Fighters in Tokyo, Japan. Overseas, he was good for a 3.60 ERA and went 55-49, leading the team in wins 3 years in a row. His resilience got him back to the majors in 1999, signing with the Boston Red Sox that year, and he would finish his major league career with the Houston Astros in 2000. Now, Gross is telling his story. He's in the process of writing an autobiography, and today he took a break to join me on Touching Base. Dude, thanks so much for doing this, man. You have such an awesome story, and I really can't wait to get to it. But let's just start kind of from the beginning. What got you into the sport? Did you have any early influences, or did you have any favorite players? What made you fall in love with the game?
Fall in love with the game, I guess you could say, was when I was really young. I just always looked up to the guys who were older than me, and I always kind of wanted to be with them. And I knew I had some type of talent because I was always kind of as good as some of the older guys were. And so I just always wanted to prove to them that I could hang with them. And that's kind of where it was with that. And then as I started getting a little bit older, George Brett was just a complete idol of mine, at the Royals third baseman. And I used to follow the Royals like you couldn't believe as a kid. I mean, every night I'd be on the radio, they're on TV. It was just so much more. And then that's a story in itself, because later on, I actually played against the Royals, and George was actually on the other team. So it was in spring training, kind of a cool story.
That had to be really neat. And I guess growing up in Nebraska, I mean, the Royals were probably that state's team, I would say, right? Either that or maybe the Cardinals.
Well, yeah, it was kind of the Royals. I come from Western Nebraska, though, so I was so far away from Kansas City. So yeah, you could say the Royals, but there's so many Cubs fans
Yeah,
back then, because that's all that was on TV for the most part. With WGN,
WGN, sure.
everybody watched the Cubs and the Braves, and so at that time, it was pretty much those two teams, Turner Broadcasting, and so I wouldn't say there was a lot of Royals fans. Eastern Nebraska, yes. Western Nebraska, where I grew up in the sticks, basically, yeah, there were. And that's why when the Rockies came in, that was a lot closer. So now everybody
Yeah,
from where I come from is a Rockies fan now.
yeah,
And
yeah. Now they actually have a closer team.
yeah,
But that's pretty cool. So, the older kids kind of motivated you to do your best. And then, George Brett was a big inspiration. That led you to get drafted in 1985 by the St. Louis Cardinals, not too far from Nebraska. But you opted to wait a year and
yeah.
get drafted by my favorite team, the New York Mets, in 1986. Now, what was the reason for the 1 year wait?
Well, the whole story was I went to Nebraska. I walked on at Nebraska. Didn't have any offers from anybody, no looks, nothing, whatever. Like I said, I come from Western Nebraska, and so when I walked on there, they gave me a chance, and it was, to me, it was kind of like, you kind of be. I just wanted to play for Nebraska, basically, and so I went to Nebraska my first year, made the team. They redshirted me. And then that summer, they called me and said, "Hey, Kip, we got a junior college down in Tishomingo, Oklahoma, Murray State Junior College, that would love to give you a full scholarship to go play baseball, and then you can come back here the next year and play." And so I went there, and sure as hell, I got drafted by the Cardinals in I think it was the third round of the January draft. Mike Roberts was the scout. I'll never forget his name. And he calls me up one day and says, "Hey, we drafted you in the third round. We'll call you back in a couple of days with an offer." They made an offer, and it wasn't much of an offer at that time.
Right.
And in the back of my head, I'd always wanted to, being loyal to Nebraska, I wanted to go back and play for Nebraska, because I didn't, because I was a redshirt the first year. And so I then Nebraska gave me a full ride to come back. And so it all worked out. If I had, I'll just tell you this, if I had to do it all over again, I'd have signed.
Right.
And the reason is because there's nothing that replaces professional baseball as far as the instruction. And I didn't have a pitching coach until I finally signed my contract with the Mets in '86. I didn't have any. I mean, I shouldn't say I didn't have any. I mean, Mike Evans with Nebraska, he was an infield coach. And then the pitching coach had to leave my freshman year when I redshirted really early, Ray Tromba. And so I didn't really have a pitching coach until '86 when I finally signed. So that's when I started learning how to pitch and mechanics and stuff like that. So I would have signed if I had to do it all over again. And by the way, the Cardinals one great organization over the years, so I
Yeah.
might have missed out on that. So, but it was good.
Yeah.
But when I went to the Mets, it was awesome. I mean, I went into my first thing I went to was instructional league. Because I held out because I always wanted to play up in Alaska too.
Right.
And so
Right.
that summer, I went up to Alaska, and we actually won the national title that year. We won the championship, and it was so much fun. Got to experience Alaska for 3 months, which was unbelievable. And so anybody out there, if you ever get a chance to go to Alaska during the summer, go. I highly, highly recommend it. So
I got to
yeah.
put that on my list. That's awesome. Either way, you couldn't have gone wrong. The Cardinals were a great team back then. I think they won the pennant in '85. The Mets obviously won the World Series in 1986. So you opt to go with the Mets. You spent a few years in the minors with that team. Did you have any cross? I know you never made it to the bigs with the Mets, but did you have any crossover with some of the stars from those mid to late '80s teams?
Yeah, Dwight Gooden. Him and I used to kind of hang out once in a while. Believe it or not, I used to polish his cars in the
That's
winter.
awesome. That's a great story.
Yeah, I had to make money somehow, and I've always been a worker. So I started polishing cars. I lived in Florida because I
Yeah.
was down there, and so I had Kip's polishing service or whatever the hell I called it. And
Right.
next thing you know, Greg Pavlik was a good friend of mine. I don't know if you
Mhm.
remember his name. He was a pitching coach
I
instructor.
remember the name. Yeah, absolutely.
He was a bullpen coach for the Mets at that time, and him and I used to go fishing all the time.
Oh, that's
And
great.
next thing you know, he's hooking me up with Doc, getting him to polishing his cars because he had a fleet of them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I would get shoes and spikes and stuff because hell, nobody had any money. And
Right.
it's not like it is now. Everybody just sends you shoes and
Oh my
all.
God. Yeah.
Back.
They pay you to wear their shoes. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable now.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was getting Sid Fernandez was I had his size shoes.
Yeah.
So I was actually wearing his shoes. And so yeah, I crossed a lot of paths, here and there. But my story with the Met, there's just a lot of wild stories with me
Oh, I'll bet.
baseball. So
Yeah.
uh just things that you normally don't happen, just happened to me for whatever reason. And so you know what? I just
Right.
went with it. Playing 16 years later, it all worked out.
That's great. That's great to hear. So you stay, I think, in that organization through 1989. A lot of the Mets players, it's almost like they cleaned house in '89. I think that was Gary Carter's last year. It was Keith Hernandez's last year. Lenny Dykstra, Mookie Wilson, and you ended up going to the Reds for the 1990 season. Now, was it ever? Did you ever feel like you just missed such a great opportunity? You get drafted by the '86 Mets, but you don't get to be a part of the World Series team. You get your MLB debut with the Reds in 1990, but you don't get to be a part of the World Series team. Did you ever look at it like that's a missed opportunity both times, punch in the face kind of thing? Or did you not look at it like that? Did you look at it all of it as a positive for having just made the major leagues?
I looked at it as a positive always. I mean,
Yeah.
you're playing baseball, and
Yeah.
if you don't make the roster, you don't make the roster, and that's just what happened. I didn't happen to make the roster to be on the World Series teams, and that's what it is. Like I said, with the Mets, I had a strange story coming up as far as how they treated me. They did like me. I know that for a fact. I mean, hell, they moved me up in '89 from AA to AAA.
Right.
And then a couple of those guys ended up going to the big leagues in September. But then they made a couple big trades. They made that trade. I think it was Minnesota. They made a big trade with
Frank Viola?
Frank Viola. They
Yeah.
gave half the pitching prospects to
Yeah.
Minnesota for Frank Viola, which worked out.
Yep.
And so, but they just had a dynasty in basically a pitching staff of a dynasty in New York. So
They did.
it was going to be hard to crack that. It really was. And then I go
Yeah.
to the Reds, and be honest with you, when I went to the Reds and got traded to the Reds, this is almost embarrassing to say. I had to look up on in books and stuff, whatever, who was on that pitching staff. I didn't know. And that,
Well,
you know,
and funnily enough, they had a great relief crew. They had Norm Charlton, they had Rob Dibble, and
yeah, but
that was your. I mean, you started a few, but you were also a reliever as well.
yeah, my whole career, that was a big problem with my career coming up was I could do it all. You know, I
Yeah,
could start, I could middle relieve, I could come in and set up games, I could close games. And so nobody really defined a role for me.
right.
But yeah, that 90 Reds, once I got to spring training, and that was the year that Lou Piniella came in for his first year, and we had a
Yeah, after
big
Pete
ass
Rose. Yeah,
yeah, big ass talk in spring training. I remember Lou walking around the clubhouse and going in circles and talking about. He was actually praising Pete Rose and saying he did a hell of a job there and all that
yeah,
stuff. So, you know,
yeah,
he didn't. There was no negatives with him when he was talking, and I'm just sitting there thinking, you know, I'm in the big league camp right now.
yeah.
It's really cool, and I don't know half these guys at all. In fact, I didn't know any of them, to be honest with you, except for Randy Myers. I mean, him and I, you know, we were in the minor leagues together, and he goes to big leagues with the Mets. And I don't know if you know Randy Myers, but he's half not there half the time. And
I
he's a
don't know him
different
personally. I know he was a great relief pitcher. I didn't know all that about
he's a
him. Yeah,
different dude. Let's just put it that
yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah,
He's one of his own, big time. So
yeah.
we went over there and made the best of it. And next thing you know, I get called up for the ninth game. Actually, got it called up for the eighth or the ninth game, but we got rained out that night with Atlanta.
Uh-huh.
And then the next night, I get called into the game in the ninth inning, and I finished the game off. And that was the record setter for 9 straight games for the Reds. They'd never done that before to start the
Oh
season.
wow. Okay,
So
so
I
you
got,
feel like you had something to do with their
well, yeah, you
success,
know what's really cool about it when they came out with the video after the season of the World Championship Reds,
right?
the opening scene coming out
Montage. Yeah, yeah.
was me throwing the last pitch of that game and shaking the catcher Joe Oliver's hand for the
That's
ninth
awesome.
season. So that's how they opened the video, which I thought, holy shit, that's kind of cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, you play for the Reds, you play for Lou Piniella, legendary manager. In 1992, you go to play for another legendary manager in Tommy Lasorda. That had to be a really fun time because 92 was a string of 5 consecutive Rookie of the Years for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Mike Piazza was obviously included in that. But when you get to the Dodgers, you share a first initial and a last name with Kevin Gross, who actually threw, I think, a no hitter in 1992. Did
Yes.
that ever confuse? Was that ever confusing? Did that ever complicate things having the same first initial and the same last name as a teammate?
You know, it's funny. You're the first person to ever ask that question,
And of course, I
and
would be the first person to ever
well,
ask that question because that's
it's
how
funny.
my mind works. Yeah,
Well, it's kind of funny because he had K Gross on the back of his uniform, and I just
right.
had Gross. But that was way back before all the internet and people would just look up names and
Yeah,
blah blah blah. Well,
yeah,
his dad always around, and he traveled with us quite a bit and whatever. And KG and I, we hung out quite a bit. We did a lot of fishing, spring training
yeah.
down in Florida. And he's a big hunter today. And he actually had his own shows a couple of times. But we used to make fun of, or tell the media and whatever that we were brothers from another mother. And we did it all the time. And I don't know how many believed us. Probably nobody did, but we always made a big joke of it. And his dad always kind of went with us. So we hung out. It was never confusing, but I'll tell you what, that no hitter he threw against Montreal was just unbelievable. I mean, he threw curveball after curveball after curveball, and they knew it was coming. They couldn't hit it. It was fun to watch.
That's got to be awesome to be a part of that. So after 2 seasons in Los Angeles, you head overseas to play in Japan. Now, was that tough to do? Was there a huge culture shock? First of all, what was the reason in wanting to go overseas to play? And was it a culture shock for a Midwest kid from Nebraska to go to Tokyo to play baseball?
Well, I'd always told my agent from day one, if I ever get a chance to go to Japan, I want to go. I just like playing baseball, and it didn't really matter where I played. I mean, that was something back with the Mets that I could tell you later on, but I just always wanted to go. And then I get to LA, and I was on that roller coaster ride from AAA to big leagues, roller back and forth, back and forth. It never ended. It never ended. And so, kind of a funny story. the day that I finally get my contract with Japan to go over there with the Nippon Ham Fighters, didn't sign the contract yet, but I was packing my bags in Albuquerque, getting ready to go back home to my house in Nebraska before I take off. And sure as hell, Rick Dempsey was the manager,
Yeah.
and Stan Johnson was the trainer. It was just him, us three in the clubhouse that day because I was leaving. I don't remember if it was an off day or whatever, but I'm packing my bags, getting ready to go, and Demper comes walking out and says, "Hey, Tommy's on the phone," and he says, I go, "What's he want?" He says, "He wants you to go back the big leagues today." He says he's going to be a different guy with you now. I told him I IMF'd him. I said, "Tell Tommy to go." And that was it. That's a true story. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd had enough, but I'd always wanted to go to Japan anyway. But the culture shock, oh my god, it was huge.
Yeah. I'll bet.
I didn't leave my apartment for a month. I
Yeah.
really didn't. I mean, it was really hard to do to begin with. People think you just get on a plane and go somewhere, and I was doing this for reals. This just wasn't a vacation.
Yeah.
And they put me in an apartment in Roppongi. I don't know if you know what Roppongi is, but
No.
it's one of the most expensive place on the planet to live. Plus, I mean, they paid for everything, but
Right.
plus it was nothing but party all night long. And so you could hear the people out there till 3 in the morning every
Yeah.
night. It was just nonstop. So I actually had them get me a different apartment the next year because I said, I can't do this. I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, you start getting in that scene and you start going out and doing your thing. And so I said, so they moved me to another, about two subway stops away from there in Hidro. But yeah, Japan was fun. I had a great time over there, and I wouldn't change it for anything. A lot of people said I bailed and this and that. I said no, I didn't bail. I just wanted to play baseball, and I wanted to
No,
play.
actually, you found a role for yourself. I mean, you were getting
Yeah,
bounced around, whether it was between, relief pitcher, starter, or minors and majors. You found a consistent role for yourself, and you proved to be a great player over there.
what's so funny? You're saying this is because I actually got signed over there to be a closer.
Really.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I'd go and I'd sit in the bullpen, and our team wasn't good when I got over there. I
Yeah.
didn't have I didn't have one chance, not one chance that I had to close a game when I got there. And so the GM comes to me finally and says, "Hey, Kip, would you like to start a game or two?" And I said, "Absolutely." I didn't. I think I came in relief like 2 years later in the season. That was it. But yeah,
Right.
I started. I
Don't
did
worry,
well.
I'm still here. I know I went to black,
Yeah,
but
you're fine.
my camera's kind of been finicky. But that's really cool. Like I remember I used to be a news anchor, and you can't just start in New York. You have to go to little known cities that you're not familiar with to start. I went to Eureka, California. I never left my apartment. It was just so much of a culture shock. It was too difficult to deal with. It was just too much, too soon almost. And you're 3,000 miles away from home, so it takes getting used to. And I can totally understand it. But I'm glad it all worked out for you in Japan.
Yeah, it did. I had a lot of success over there. They said I was one of the best gaijin pitchers to ever play in Japan. It was really really strange. I did change a lot of things over there as far as how I pitched and did things because they're more about your ERA than they are winning.
Right.
And I had it in my contract where every win I got so much extra in a bonus. And I also had in my contract, if your ERA was a certain number at the end of the year, you get a certain bonus. And I actually told him to take that out of my contract because I said ERAs don't win games. You got to
Yeah.
learn how to pitch to win games. And they couldn't quite understand that. But by the time I'd left there, like I said, I was on a team that just wasn't very good, and I
Yeah.
led the league 2 years in a row in wins. And then that third year, uh, I was there. I was there at the end, but no Gaijin had ever won the wins title 3 straight times. So things just didn't start happening properly the way they normally did, as far as things behind you and I'm not calling out the team as far as making errors or something, but things just at times it didn't seem right. So, but yeah, to go over there and win a lot of games with that team, it was special. So I had a good career over there.
That's awesome. Yeah, 3 years in a row you led the team in wins. So how would you say the gameplay in Japan is kind of different from the gameplay in the major leagues?
You know what? So many people ask me that question over the years. We had we played against the Ichiros. Nomo was there when I played. There was a lot of really, really good players that never did play in the big leagues that really should have been playing in the big leagues over
Right.
there. But then again, on the other side, there was a few guys on every team that probably wouldn't get out of A ball or double A here.
Yeah.
And so you had a big mixture of guys. So overall, I would say it was triple A plus plus. Uh, but yeah, you had. I mean, the thing about the Japanese hitters that people don't really understand is they teach them over there to keep their hands back really, really well.
Yeah.
And so they're not really easy to strike out by any means. And they play the small ball game big time. If the first guy of the game gets on base, they bunt him over.
Yeah.
And so they're
Small ball.
playing ball from the very beginning. But I will tell you this: fundamentally, never in my life have I ever been on a team that was so fundamentally sound as that team over there. My first year over there, they didn't make an error behind me. My first year.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I went over mid-season. It was a little bit before mid-season, but didn't make an error behind me in my first year over there. So they're just fun, and that's why they won the World Baseball Classic this year. They're just fundamentally sound. Every year in the Little League World Series, the Asian teams are always right there at the end, and there's a reason for it because that's what they teach over there, and they don't have travel ball. They play a lot of baseball, but they teach fundamentals before they go out and try to win a ton of games. And so the practice over there is practice makes perfect, and they
Yeah.
do it well.
And
Yeah,
that's the way to do it. So
yeah.
you come after 5 years in Japan. You come back to the majors in 1999. What was the reason for coming back? And did you miss Japan, or was it your aim to get back to the big leagues eventually?
You know what it was? At that time, my late wife, Jamie, she was still around, and she had never experienced the big leagues. And so I got the opportunity to sign a 2-year deal with Boston. And so I took a pretty big pay cut to come back for her. And so I did it. I said, let's go back. And so you can experience the big leagues, and that's the reason I did it. And it didn't work out very well because Boston at that time,
Yeah.
uh, they just it was the GM at that time. He wasn't very truthful with people, and I wasn't going to have it. I got hurt very early. I broke a finger, had a line drive come back at me. I think it was against the Tampa Bay Rays at the time,
Yeah.
and broke my little finger in 2 spots. And that's back when I was really relying on my circle change, which you throw off your pinky.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they didn't even recognize it. They wouldn't even send me to a doctor. They didn't do a thing with it. And so that was basically the start of the end of my career, was when that ball hit my finger.
Yeah.
And so do I regret going back? No, because she got to experience the big leagues.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
but I could have probably stayed in Japan for 2-3 more years, and really, really did well over there. But I wouldn't change a thing that I did in baseball. I really wouldn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had 16 years. I had a lot of fun.
Glad to hear that. How about your involvement in the game now? Do you still have involvement? I think you would make a great broadcaster. I don't know if you've ever been approached by that or thought about doing it. You got the look, you got the voice, but any involvement in the game now?
You know what? I can't tell you how many times people have told me that.
Yeah.
I've been doing these podcasts now, and more people are getting a hold of me. I'm actually doing another one tonight. I got another one tomorrow I'm doing, and I'm actually starting my own. Somebody, one of the producers wants me to start my own. So we've been working on one here for a while, but
That's great.
the broadcasting thing, I just didn't do it. I don't know. I just never knew or had an agent that said anything. But the voice thing, people have been saying for years, man. I can't tell you how many times I've been told about the voice. And but I've been giving lessons for a lot of years to kids. I really enjoy giving lessons to kids. I've coached teams since my son was 8 until he graduated from high school. I coached my daughter in high school.
Right.
So yeah, I've been very involved. I give lessons over FaceTime. I give lessons over Zoom.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
I just, now as we're sitting here, a guy just texted me that I've never met. He wants me to work with his kid via FaceTime. I mean, it just, when you have
So
the knowledge,
cool.
when you're really good at what you do, people find out and they do it. I've never advertised, and it
Yeah.
just keeps happening. So as far as coaching in professional baseball or college, I had an offer one time a few years back to coach a college team,
Right.
and I told them right away. I said, "Well, I don't have a 4-year degree. I went to college, but I don't have a 4-year degree, and that's you're supposed to have that." And they said, "Ah, don't worry about it. We'll make you an assistant. What do you call whatever you do the head guy for the in athletics." Anyway,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
they said we'll make you an assistant, and so you'll be fine.
Right.
And I was trying to get out of it. I was just trying to tell them I don't want to do this because I don't want to take care of kids 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
And as far as professional baseball goes, I've had several really influential pitchers that have been in the game for many years and coaching and up in the ranks in these organizations. They said you need to do this, and I said, guys, as long as they're not going to allow me to coach, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
These days they just give you a title and say, okay, this is what you got to do. This guy, this got you do with that guy. This is how many pitches he's going to throw. I don't want to do that. I want
Yeah.
to, I want to, if I'm going to coach, I want to coach.
I understand that. Yeah.
And, one year I went up to Victoria, British Columbia and did an independent team. And I pretty much ran the show up there, and it was fun. It was a lot of work for not much, but it was that's more or less what I would like to do. And I did really well with that up there too. So yeah.
Yeah. That was your passion. Absolutely. So,
So,
yeah, keep going. I'm sorry.
no, it's good. I mean, I keep in touch with a lot of the kids I've coached over the years, and they're doing well. I think teaching the young kids to me is just more beneficial to me, and I just get a lot more out of it.
Yeah, it's more rewarding to pass on what you know and see them grow into it. I can
Yeah.
totally understand that. My kid is in T-ball now. He's in his last year of T-ball. It's one of the sports I hope he stays with. So we'll see what happens, but it is all the more rewarding to see him do it.
Right.
Um, are you still close with any former players?
Yes. Yeah. I talk to a lot of former players.
Yeah.
What's really funny you're saying that right now is because I stay in touch with my college at Nebraska. A lot of players from college, a lot more than I do the professional guys. But I still do keep in touch with quite a few guys. Tim Wallach, Charlie
Yeah.
Huff,
Great expo. Yeah, I remember Tim.
Scott. Yeah, good friends of mine. Phil Nevin.
Yep.
Just talked to Aaron Boone a few days ago. Yeah, there's a lot of guys. Brett Boone,
Yeah.
The whole Boone clan know all those guys really well. So
Yep.
yeah, you do. You really don't realize it because they're more, they're friends of yours. But when you talk to people, like, oh my God, like my son, I got him field passes from Aaron Boone for the Yankees Dodger series,
Right.
and they're all like, oh my God, I can't believe he did it. But it was just a text.
Yeah, that's all it was. You guys are friends. And I think I actually saw that picture on social media. That was pretty
Oh,
cool.
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's what that was. And so, you don't really realize it because you lived that life for so many years, but I guess it is pretty cool in the end.
it is absolutely awesome. So you have an awesome story, and it certainly is book worthy. And I believe you have a book in the works, which I'm guessing is an autobiography. Can you tell me a little bit about it without giving too much away?
I can tell you quite a bit about it. It's basically just my life growing up and how I did grow up. It's called Figure It Out, and my whole life. I get a little choked up right away when I talk about this because my whole life I've just had to figure it out. When I
Yeah,
grew up as a kid, I just had a dad that just wasn't there.
yeah,
He was there, but he was more the narcissist guy, and
yeah.
it was more about him than anything else. And so started having to buy my own clothes at 9 years old.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh yeah, just everything. I had to work for everything I had.
Oh,
There was nothing given to me nowhere down the line. So my whole life, just things have happened. My mom passed away when she was 50, when I was with the Reds, of severe brain cancer. My late wife, she passed away at 48. And so, don't get me wrong, I've had a lot of great things happen to me too, and that's all in this book. But
right.
you just got to learn how to deal with stuff and figure it
Yeah.
out. And so, a lot of stories. I mean, I can't. I'm. It's my story is so crazy just from the time I was a kid till, just a few years ago, the things that have happened to me, good and bad.
Yeah.
And so, every time I've talked to anybody like yourself, they say, Kip, you need to write a book. And
Yeah.
so last year, just I got a hold of a ghostwriter
Finally
and
happened. Yeah.
started, and she said, this is going to be a bestseller, no question about it, with everything you're telling me. So we'll see what happens with it. It's
Yeah.
it's getting close. Doing a lot of work with it. So yeah, it's a cool book. It's going to be a cool book.
That's great. And it's going to be an inspirational book, and I will be sure to get a copy. So let's talk about today's game a little bit. I want to talk to you. I've talked to a lot of pitchers since starting this series, and I always ask them the same thing, and that is about the pitch clock because it seems to be the new rule. I mean, there's so many rules over the last 10 years that have kind of renovated the game of baseball, but that seems to be the big one this year. Um, do you think that a pitch clock is good for the game? I mean, can it screw with a pitcher's mentality? Do you think it keeps them zoned in? Is it something that you would have preferred when you played? I know the couple of pitchers that I spoke with said they worked fast anyway, but would you have liked to have had a clock on a game like baseball?
No.
Yeah, no, me
Playing,
neither.
no, I was a very fast worker. I was just telling my son the other day, I had a game one time, it lasted 2 hours and 1 minute. I think I threw 83 pitches in the game, and I got in there, I threw the ball. But the reason I don't like the clock, and I understand why they're doing it, they want to make it a little quicker paced for all
Yeah,
these younger fans now that
go watch basketball.
whatever it is,
Yeah,
and
or
it
hockey.
to me, I think when it's really going to come down to it is you're going to get in the playoffs or the World Series, and something's going to happen, and it's gonna influence the game somehow, and you're gonna have half the fans on one side and half the fans on the other, and
Yeah,
they're gonna now hate it, and the other one say, "Geez, oh my God, what just happened?" I mean, there's been so many instances now where the pitcher or the hitter gets nailed for a ball or whatever, and then next thing you know,
yeah,
the pitcher gets mentally out of it for a second. Next thing you know, they call it ball on him.
yeah. What's he supposed to do?
It's the whole thing is just the rule's always been there for so
Yeah,
many seconds regardless. The whole problem is the umpires never enforced it.
right.
And so I wouldn't have a problem with just saying, hey guy, hey hitter, get in the box, let's
Yeah,
go.
just like golf, pace of play. It's just an
No,
unwritten rule, but now they have to make a written rule out of it. Now you have automatic strikes, automatic balls. Pitchers can throw strikeouts having only thrown two strikes. And what you said earlier is exactly what Denny Nagel said. There's going to be a situation late in the game where it's going to be called on a penalty and the other team is going to win. And that's not a way to win baseball. It negates how it works. And, I'm against it too. As much as I like the faster pace of play, I would rather see the penalty be throw the pitcher out of the game for having violated the clock than giving the batter an automatic strike or an automatic ball or whatever it is.
right. Yeah, I'm with Danny. I mean, I played with Negs. I played with him over
Yeah,
in I got a great story about him. I can't really say it on here, but
that's okay.
I played with him in Puerto Rico one
He
year.
was a great interview too.
He's a good dude. He's really good
Yeah,
dude. Anyway, this pitch clock thing is just it's I went to a few games in spring training, and I sat right behind the plate and I watched the whole thing. And first of all, it has to be in your eye vision as a hitter and as a pitcher to see it.
yeah,
And so you're kind of seeing that a little bit. And now you see that the runners are taking advantage of it. They're setting it up where the hitter doesn't get in till a certain amount of time. Now the pitcher has to get things done with a certain amount of time. So now he can't hold the ball as long as he might want to. And then if you pick off, you only get two pickoffs now. The third one has to be good, or they go to to the next base.
yeah,
They're figuring out ways to manipulate it,
yeah.
and you
And they're
shouldn't.
figuring it out as they go while they're playing.
Yes. What was it? Just a few days ago, I think it was. They're the top. I looked this up myself. There was like the top 10 base stealers last year had 300 and I think 20 something stolen bases total.
Wow.
And this year they're on pace for having
They're probably
500.
already yeah, they're probably already there.
It's like 580 this year.
Yeah.
It's gonna get to, and so that's just the top 10 guys.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're different people, whatever. But it's still you're getting it's there's a few guys on pace for 60 stolen bases this year, 60, 70 stolen bases this year. So, having the bigger bases,
It all has to do with it.
just
Yeah.
they're just, honestly, I didn't really think about this too much until just a few days ago, because I'm just trying to figure out, why do they want all these runs scored? What's the purpose of it?
I don't know either. I
I
don't know
think
what
it,
the
I
purpose
think
is
it's
of
bad.
speeding the game up. I mean, I guess maybe it's an attention, but there's certain, maybe that one is a bad example, but there are certain rule changes. It's what's the point of it?
Well,
That's the question I keep coming back to is what is the point of it?
why does so many people watch NFL football? Because of betting and fantasy.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking maybe they're doing this to get the interest of all these fantasy geeks to want to watch baseball.
Want to watch baseball. I mean, that's
Because
as good a theory as any. I mean,
I don't know. It's just another one I'm
yeah,
throwing out there, but it just seems like all these crazy rules. I said this at the beginning of the season. If you took a team from 10 years ago and they were in a coma for 10 years, if they woke up today, they would not know how to play the game today. They would have no
they
clue.
wouldn't. They
They would
wouldn't.
have no idea how to play this game right now. And that's just not right. This commissioner that came in, in his last, I think he's been there 8, 9, 10 years now.
Yeah.
What
Yep.
he has done for the rules, other commissioners have done things for rules too, but like for RBIs or some stat thing. But this is
Yeah.
on the field. Everything he's done is on the field, and it's to me, it's just kind of crazy. Why, what, where, how, all this
Yeah.
stuff. Why?
All of
Why
it.
are you doing this? Are you just putting your name or stamp on your name on a, for the future in baseball, so
Could
people know
very well be. It could
what
very well be.
you're doing for? I don't know. All I know is I'm not a fan of it. Yes, the game is quicker. Games are getting over faster. They have already changed the beer sales. They've added
Yeah.
another to it, which
Yeah.
that's hypocritical in itself, because
Yeah.
they did it, to keep everybody sober before they leave, and now they're adding an inning to it.
Yeah.
Which is so. When it all boils down to it, it's about money.
It's all about money. That's why they did the beer rule. I mean,
That's all it is.
and look, I'll still watch it. Of course, I'm still going to watch it. It's always going to pique my interest. But I just, these rule changes, it's like every year it's something new. And it's like, come on, just leave the game alone.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are you going to do? You got to change with the times, I guess.
I mean, it's just a whole list of stuff this guy's done. I mean, what did not picking to third base? How'd that speed up the game? How did automatically walking a hitter without throwing the pitches to the catcher? How'd that speed up the game?
Yeah, it didn't.
Just
And that's another. I hate automatics in baseball. The automatic runner and extra innings on second base. That doesn't make sense. Does that get charged to the pitcher? I mean, I don't like how it all works. Even instant replay. I mean, I would rather see instant replay holds up the game, and I would
yeah,
rather see a manager argue a call than watch umpires,
right.
on headset trying to figure out if the call was right.
Yeah, and
So
guys
I mean,
get thrown out.
I like them getting the plays right, but at the same time, I don't like how I just don't like how it's changing so much. I can absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, there's just too much at one time.
Yeah,
And it, like I said, if it wasn't on the field stuff, big deal. But
yeah,
then people have always said, well, over the years and since the beginning of time, they've been changing rules. No, they really haven't.
and not at this rate. They haven't. Not at
no,
this rate.
they lowered the mound, what, 1960 something
Yeah,
to inches.
after Bob
Yeah,
Gibson's great
that
year.
was big. That was
Yeah,
big. But that's about it. There really hasn't been anything else on the field that's changed. So yeah, I don't like it.
I don't like it either. But I know you still watch the game. Do you any players, or first of all, what's your team, and are there any players who have impressed you this year, or any teams you think will go far into the playoffs this year?
Uh, I do watch it again because my son watches it quite a bit, and so I do stay interested with him. As far as a favorite team, like I said, I was a Royals fan
Still
growing
the
up,
Royal, yeah,
and I didn't quit being a Royals fan, but once I signed a professional contract and started playing the National League, I realized that the American League baseball is just not fun. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
it's glorified slow pitch softball, basically, is what it is.
Yeah,
And
it's exactly right. National League was more of an intellectual, cerebral kind of small
yeah,
ball league.
so much you as a manager, and so
Yeah,
much
you have to worry about the pitcher in the lineup, all that, which
everything,
that's
everything,
gone too now.
all of it. It's all gone. There's
Yeah,
none of it anymore. It's all glorified slow pitch softball now.
that's a great way to put it.
Uh, I you know I think the athletes are great today. I there's just so much that's changed in the game. If I would, I kind of root sometimes for the Dodgers a little bit. I kind of root
Yep.
for St. Louis once in a while. I root for the Mets once in a while. I mean, these are all teams that I played for.
Yep.
And so the Reds, same way. Players wise, I just want to see players that play the game hard and not showboat and go out and do their thing and be done with it. And that's the players I like to see. You're just seeing so much of this, now they're putting on hats and
Yeah,
gowns.
you're seeing a lot more of it nowadays than when you played. That's one of the big, other than the rules, that's a big change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I don't understand it at all. Why I mean, I understand why they're doing it. They're having fun,
Yeah.
and people say, well, it's a kid's game. They're having fun, but they're playing for millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, you got to be. There's got to be a class with the fun. There's got to be a
Right.
classiness to it.
So it's these guys are making so much money today that in their guaranteed contracts that they can do what they want to do.
Right.
As soon as they sign that dotted line, it's like they almost turn it into a clown show out there.
Yeah.
And you got that one guy from the Padres now. He hits a home run and he trots and struts, and then he gets to third base and he stops and backs up and then runs back.
Yeah.
It just, I mean, can't you just play the game hard? I mean, if that happened when I was pitching, I wouldn't even hit him. I promise you, I wouldn't hit him. I'd hit the next guy in the lineup. I'd just drill the next guy right wild. I'd let him deal with it in the dugout. I'm getting drilled because of you. You're doing this. I'm getting drilled. So that's how I used to do it. I mean, when there was they were relaying signs from second base to home plate, I used to step off the mound. I'd walk over toward my shortstop, not to the runner. I'd walk up to the shortstop.
Right.
Hey, you got two choices here. Either you stop giving the signs, or he's getting drilled. Take your pick.
Right.
Whatever you want to do, I'm going to do whatever you want to do. And so he'd quit giving signs every time. I wouldn't even say it to the runner. He'd just hear me say it to my shortstop. And so everybody thought I was talking to my shortstop, but I wasn't. I was talking to the runner.
That's great. That's a great disguise, though. That's a good way to do it.
You had to do things because sure, guys give signs. It's not cheating. It's not cheating at all to give signs.
That's just playing the game.
Just playing the game. So those are just some of the things like that. But I very rarely hit the guy unless it was me coming in the game later and as a reliever, and then I would drill him. But and people say, why'd you drill guys? Well, because they're taking money off your table. They're taking food off your table.
Yeah.
That's how the game is played. But today it's these guaranteed contracts. And that's another thing. I think I saw a number a couple of weeks ago where it's almost 50% of major league ball players make minimum or under $1 million a year.
Yeah.
And
that's why they're commodities now. They're objects. It's like that's why you won't see a pitcher throw 130, 140 pitches in a game like in your day, because his arm is priceless now.
And they've all had Tommy John surgery.
Yeah.
Which is crazy in itself. So
yeah.
I don't know. It's just a different game today.
It is.
I still watch it, but doesn't mean I have to like what they're doing on the field all the time.
Absolutely not.
But it's hard for me to watch a game too, because I've been a teacher of the game for so long now that I critique so much. I look at the pitcher's motion. I look at how they field the ball. And so it's kind of hard for me to watch a game, especially from the stands. I go with my son quite a bit because we're in Arizona. We go to the Diamondbacks games, but it's hard for me to sit there and enjoy a game as much as I'd like to because of that.
Well, yeah, it's hard to be a fan when you're a pro at it, and it's easier to be a critic.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Just breaking down some pictures.
Yeah, unbelievable. So, dude, thanks so much for doing this. We'll see how the rest of the season pans out. I'm so glad to hear your awesome story. I'm glad to hear you're doing well with this book. Like I said, I'll make sure to grab a copy of it because I do want to hear the rest of the story. But thanks for telling me all of what you told me today. Sorry my camera died, but I'm glad we were able to finally, after the technical issues we had in the beginning of the before the interview, I'm glad we got those worked out, and I'm glad I was able to hear your story, man. So thanks so much, and we will stay in touch, my friend.
All right, I appreciate it. You guys have a great one.
Okay? Take care, buddy. Bye-bye.
Good one. Bye.